When the New Zealand government recently rolled out its new traffic light system for welfare, it came with a highly publicized victory metric. Officials announced that 33,000 people had successfully moved off Jobseeker benefits and entered the workforce as the system powered up. But this bar chart reveals the corresponding statistic that occurred during that exact same 6-month period. Alongside those new jobs, we see a massive spike, a 126% increase in the volume of welfare sanctions issued against beneficiaries. To understand how these penalties are applied, we have to look back to the 1990s. During this period, New Zealand's welfare state abandoned its historical philosophy of a universal, rights-based safety net, replacing it with a model of conditional support. Conditional support means that receiving financial aid from the government now requires citizens to meet specific ongoing obligations. You might be required to actively apply for jobs, attend upskilling seminars, or even officially enroll your dependent children with healthcare providers. Politicians frequently pitch this conditionality to the public as an engine for economic growth and personal accountability. Yet the actual mechanical process of how a citizen is graded, warned, and ultimately punished remains largely hidden behind bureaucratic closed doors. The government's new traffic light system begins in the warning phase. Everyone starts on green, which simply confirms that a beneficiary is in full compliance with all their assigned obligations. The status flips to orange the moment an obligation has failed. Perhaps the beneficiary missed a mandatory work seminar. Once that light turns orange, a strict 5-day timer starts ticking. The citizen has exactly 5 working days to successfully dispute the failure or complete a recompliance activity. Failing to resolve an orange status before that clock runs out pushes the beneficiary into red. This activates what the Ministry of Social Development calls the graduated sanctions regime. This flowchart maps how penalties escalate. Grade 1 hits on a first failure, cutting benefits by 50%. A second failure pushes them to Grade 2, suspending support completely. A third failure triggers Grade 3, canceling benefits entirely and initiating a rigid 13-week walkout period. There is one primary caveat built into these tiers. If the beneficiary has dependent children, the system caps the financial penalty at a maximum of 50% across all 3 grades to ensure minors are protected from total destitution. The system is highly calibrated. It calculates previous failures and applies sequentially increasing financial pressure, operating under the assumption that cutting income is the most effective way to force compliance. Financial ruin isn't always the government's preferred option, especially for a first-time failure, where an immediate cash cut might be deemed too risky. For these cases, the system recently introduced non-financial sanctions. Instead of losing their money entirely, a sanctioned job seeker might have a portion of their benefit diverted onto heavily restricted payment cards, limiting what they are allowed to buy. Alternatively, they can be mandated to perform community work experience to clear the penalty. Then there are penalties that bypass the traffic light phases completely, like the standalone warrant to arrest sanction. This sanction is triggered through a digital data match agreement between the Ministry of Social Development and the Ministry of Justice. If a beneficiary has an unresolved arrest warrant, the system automatically suspends their payments, ensuring taxpayer funds aren't used to aid active fugitives. These additional tools have integrated the welfare machine into the country's broader behavioral and legal enforcement networks. The stated economic theory driving this conditionality is straightforward. Deploying the threat of severe sanctions increases the monetary and non-monetary costs of being unemployed. In theory, this forces individuals to lower their wage expectations and accept available work faster. Internal reviews compiled by the Ministry of Social Development and the Welfare Expert Advisory Group tell a very different story about how these tools perform in practice. While mild obligations can sometimes nudge people toward employment, the data on severe sanctions shows they actively produce worse job quality. Sanctioned individuals experience lower stability in the workforce, higher rates of exiting to total economic inactivity, and more rapid returns to the benefit system. Beyond poor employment statistics, the reviews document severe unintended fallout. Pushing vulnerable individuals deeper into poverty exacerbates mental health crises, limits access to housing, and creates measurable, detrimental long-term outcomes for children living in sanctioned families. The harshest settings of the welfare machine are empirically proven to be counterproductive to its own stated goal. Instead of creating a stable working populace, extreme sanctions often drive people further away from employment. The internal data also reveals that the damage caused by these systemic failures is not distributed equally. Year over year, the statistics show the sanctions regime disproportionately impacts Māori communities. When internal government analysts reviewed the policy through a Te Ao Māori lens, they found that the very nature of a punitive, threat-based welfare system clashes with core Indigenous values. Specifically, the system operates in direct conflict with the principle of manakitanga. Rather than acting with a positive, people-centered focus to uplift a person's dignity, the implementation of financial sanctions is inherently negative, punitive, and degrading. A machine built on conditional threats and financial pressure only functions as intended if there are accessible, stable jobs waiting on the other side. When those opportunities are scarce, the system ceases to be an engine for economic growth and simply becomes a mechanism for punishing the vulnerable.